Charlie Blazier, once known as Charlie the Wolfer, was a trapper by nature and knew the country better than most men. He was a skilled horse rider and a crack shot with his Winchester. An early job of Charlie's was to hunt hungry wolves that preyed on range cattle. With the passing of the open range days in Blazier's early teens, he took to hunting and trapping. Charlie showed many hunters the area. In October of 1908, a group of hunters left Calgary to hunt antelope in the Brooks region. They hired Charlie for their trip, but unfortunately, there wasn't much in the area. The trip was unsuccessful. A week later, the hunters came back and brought a special guest, the former mayor of Calgary. Charlie showed the men the One Tree area and led them along the Red Deer River. This time, they ended up with quite the haul. A camp was set up at One Tree for the night. That day and evening had been quite nice, but being in Alberta, we all know weather can change on a dime. And it did. That night, a blizzard sprang from the prairie winds. Blazier had brought coal for the evening fire and the one next morning, but fuel was scarce on the prairie. The storm lasted a whole week, and all they had left to burn was the wagon box. Charlie decided to let the horses loose as they could take better care for themselves. Those were hard days for hunters. Comfort was found in a strong bottle of moonshine. When the storm blew over, two of the hunters walked back to Brooks, which was about 23 miles from camp. Blazier went searching for the horses, and a rescue mission was sent from Brooks to find the rest of the party at the camp. Charlie later made his living catching antelope, taming them, and then selling them. He'd have to catch them at a young age, usually just days old, before they got their prairie legs. On his horse, he'd grab the infant antelope and carry it home. At home, he had corrals built with a number of dairy cows. Blazier made many friends who helped him over the years. Ray Wilfie assisted him in catching older antelope. Since they were faster and harder to trap, Ray would release trained and muzzled hounds. One would trip the fawn, and the other held it down until Charlie arrived with his sack. Many Métis also knew and hunted with Blazier. Charlie sold to many public parks and zoos in the United States. In the autumn, he traveled to various cities like New York, San Francisco, and many more. Prices were really good for Charlie, and he ended up making several $1,000s from his ventures. Charlie and his dogs became a sight often seen on the Albertan prairie. He loved the prairie life and lived in an era of the past. Once the prairie became flooded with ranchers and farmers, Charlie's life as a trapper became a distant memory. In 1938, Charlie passed away at the Eventide home in Gleason.